Hey, print hustlers. All right, fun episode. Here's why. Sometimes we talk about buying a business to grow it. Sometimes we talk about selling it to change, your life, your career, whatever you want to do with your shop. Today, we've got the buyer and the seller of the same business. Now, why is that cool? Well, if you're not buying, if you're not selling, that's fine. But we also go into growth and what a hired CEO would do to grow a business. Because I don't think we often make the right decisions. And that's because we're ingrained in the business. That's because, we're in the weeds. We're sensitive about topics. And there's a good balance there, right? There's a really good balance that we have to have. But what would a hired CEO do today? What decisions would that person make today if they were there in your business? And are those decisions that you should be making soon? So we're going to get into some of those and what the new buyer of silver screen printing is doing and the growth and just the hammering on doors and sales that he is doing to help grow this shop and why he liked this shop as well. So, all right. But really quickly, we've got 4 incredible sponsors. Look, these 4 are always helping to support the podcast and continuing to help us pump out episodes. First up, Supercolor. Supercolor is the world's best heat transfer, made for screen printers by screen printers. They understand the pressures and expectations of running a screen printing business, and that's why they pride themselves on being super fast and super easy. Supercolor's support, also awesome. Their quality, their new Gen 2 transfer, amazing. And Supercolor helps you make it. So use Printavo 15. That gets you 15% off your order. Multicraft. Look, go to Instagram, open up your app, type in multicraft_daddy, and send Dave your email address. He's entering those in. He's giving stuff out every single week, PMI tape, and a bunch of other really cool stuff. So be able to send that, check out their site and all the awesome products. They've been around for 50 years plus, providing our industry with top brands at competitive pricing. If you mention the Printavo pod, that gets you 10% off your first order. Thanks, Multicraft. Easy Way. If you're spending hours cleaning dirty screens, that is a thing of the past with Easy Way screen printing and screen cleaning chemicals. Their innovative formulas are designed to work quickly and effectively so you can spend less time cleaning and more time creating. Plus, Easy Way is passionate about empowering printers of all skill levels. They offer helpful resources and expert advice to help you succeed in printing. Thanks, Easy Way and Alex and the team. You guys are awesome. Last but not least, GraphX Source. If you need a solution to improve efficiency and reduce costs in your art department, GraphX Source is there. They are industry leading. They have industry leading outsourcing options. And this is stuff like handling production art, digitizing, SEPs, mockups, order entry, back office admin, bunch of that cool stuff. Campus Inc. has 5 full-time folks. So they are running big time and very ingrained with GraphX Source. And you can mention Printavo Pod 24. That gets you 50% off your first vector, SEP, or digitized order to give it a try. Thanks, GraphX. And let's jump into the episode. We've got Dan Frank and Dave Olsen joining us today. Dave was the original founder of Silver Screen Printing and Embroidery, sold it to Dan, who's now running Silver Screen Printing and Embroidery. Although, Dave, you're doing a lot of help and contracting and all that good stuff to help, continue growing the business. So an interesting conversation, because sometimes we talk about selling the business and like what you have to do. Sometimes we talk about buying it and what you have to do, but we have both ends of, we have both sides of the coin here to be able to go through. And I'm excited to dive into that. But I mean, Dave, a little bit of background, maybe you started in 2003.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I guess I kind of grew up in the industry. My dad was a ad specialty sales guy and kind of did special events as a kid growing up. So Reno's great for special events. We've got balloon races and air races and camel races and anywhere you can hawk a t-shirt, right? Like was where we're at. So kind of grew up doing that, but didn't really get into it. My dad had an embroidery company. It was mom and pop, super small, 4 employees at the most, I think was his max. So kind of grew up doing graveyard shift when I was in high school during summer and would run the machines. And so we had a bunch of customers well, of course I was like, I'm not getting into the family business, right? Like this is dumb. So, so went to school for a while. School didn't really fit. My college roommate and I were doing actually dock work on a trucking company, and they asked me to go down to LA and run their dock. And my dad's like, hey, I need help. And so he's just old school. So he had all of his purchase orders, lined out at a table. And that's how he decided which order.
Triple carbon copy.
Yeah, right. So he would just, sort them and then go, oh, I kind of want to do this one next, and go run that. And so I went in and I actually went to work for my dad and did our first, we did an Access database, and was pretty slick and kept track of orders that way. And about a year later, my dad's like, you're fired. Like, this is dumb. Like, I got to do it my way. So I think he fired me like 3 times over the course of our relationship. But then he called me the next day and go, hey, why aren't you at work? Right? Like, get back in here. We got stuff to do. So that was kind of the history of it. But we had some clients that really were like, man, we wish you guys did screen printing also. So my college buddy and I were kind of debating life and what do we want to do? And his dad was like, hey, it's time to do something. So him and I decided to get into screen printing, and we actually bought a little one head all-in-one printer kind of setup. And our first washout sink was a horse trough. And so we washed out sinks, and we're like, I think we could actually do this. So we went down to Long Beach and bought a press off the floor, and
the rest
got 5,000 square feet. Yeah. And started going.
History.
So
Dave, I think what's really interesting, one of the reasons we want to have you on, we talk a lot about shop acquisition and building a business that's sellable. Dan speaks really highly of you, whether you know it or not. I don't know what the relationship looks like, but he talked about why he bought your company and what he saw in it, and different things that were just like really healthy characteristics of a business. More often than not, most screen printing shops don't have healthy, sellable characteristics. When you thought about building a business back when you were working out of a horse trough and washing out screens there, did you ever think about selling it one day? Did you ever think, I want to build a business to sell? Or like, how were you thinking about it early on in your career?
No, not really. I guess I was fortunate to see a couple operations, right? Like beforehand, from the embroidery side, like, there was other screen print shops in town. Also, Reno's pretty small. So everybody kind of helped each other a little bit. So I really saw what I didn't want to do, right? So I don't think my goal was ever to sell, but I knew I wanted to run an efficient company, and I guess a sound one. So I always wanted to make sure the accounting was right and didn't take too much out of the business and all of just the standard business practice kind of stuff. So I don't think that was the goal from the beginning. Like, our original business plan was like, be the biggest in Northern Nevada. Like, that was our huge aspirations, right? So that was kind of.
And so it's interesting. You said like a sound and efficient business that has really nice accounting. I bet you most screen printers aren't thinking like that. Like, oh, we want that. But do you feel like you got that from your dad? Was that from being around it, growing up, and seeing a sound and efficient business? Or
probably. I mean, my grandfather was, owned companies and kind of serial entrepreneur kind of mentality. So, even in the beginning, I would come into work or whatever, and my grandmother would have left me a sticky note that's like, you can't manage what you can't measure, kind of just reminders. And
okay, our grandma, right?
So,
what does clean and efficient mean though? As in, is it okay, it's a profitable business and we have comfy margin, or is it, it is really clear books and we do understand where we're spending, we do understand where we're earning, a combo of both maybe?
Yeah. I mean, I guess profit was never question in that that's how we ate, right? Like we didn't have any investors, we didn't have any money. So, if we didn't make profit that month, there was no rent being paid. So that was we always needed to make profit. But I don't know, I guess too, just having, I just liked doing stuff that way, right? Like I just wanted the books to be accurate. I wanted processes to be correct and trainable, and it's kind of how it started from the beginning. So
I'm curious, Dan, when you saw, I mean, you've come from another industry. I think it was logistics, other things like that, right? Did I get that right, baby?
That's right.
Logistics?
Yes, correct.
I remembered. I still got you. When you saw, like, and you've evaluated a lot of other companies, what did you see in sort of screen printing that you saw that was like, ooh, this is a buyable business. This is something that I want to get into. Like, what were the key things that stuck out to you?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what Dave says is what I saw. So, obviously I was in M&A before, so, I kind of knew some, what I would call, the finance guys would always look at the books, as far as, the balance sheet and the P&L and so on and so forth. I always looked at kind of how a company managed their business, how their processes were. To be honest with you, I always look at the T&E of the owner and see if it's a lifestyle company for him or they took it serious. They took it very serious. And, he found that he couldn't find software that would help him run the business. And we all know this is kind of still a business that's growing up as far as, technology and things like that. So he went and developed a portal system. And, I went on the floor and, from problem tags to receiving to things that I saw right away were scalable for sure. Just a really solid, not huge profits, but good profitable company every month. Like Dave said, he watched the books real well. And I just thought the order of the shop and I thought the vision, we talk a lot about contract logistics. Dave didn't go after bids. He didn't go after, just jobs. He looked for relationships in a business environment. I didn't understand at the time that there was a difference between retail and contract. I didn't even understand what that meant, but I saw that, I had no idea. He's like, we're a contract printer. I told Dave, where's the contracts? He said, well, we don't really have contracts. I'm like, oh, okay. But, he could take something and really look at the efficiencies and, make money doing it. And I thought it was an interesting business. I mean, just so you know, I love this business now. I think it's creative and it's fun and there's lots of elements to it that logistics doesn't have. But I just looked at his character and the way that he managed his people. And, there's still people here that have been in the business, 10 plus years. And that showed a, really dedicated leadership team as well.
Why sell, Dave? Like, what was the thought process there?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we were kind of at an inflection point. Plus, I've got 3 kids, and they were getting into the teenage years and super busy with sports and just activities. So we kind of looked at it, and I was thinking, my wife and I were talking, and do we kind of buckle down and go for another wave, right? Or do we look at downsizing even, was on the table. Do we get, buy a little time back and do that? Also at the time, presidential election going from Trump to Biden. So is the environment, what's the tax environment going to look like in the next 4 years, plus economy, plus just the market that we were in? There was a lot of like age of customer was getting up there where a lot of my big customers were talking, hey, is it time to retire? Do we time to do something like this? And so I was just kind of thinking, it's one of those times where things are going to change.
Yeah.
Not knowing anything about COVID, right? Like COVID aside, I was like, hey, just things are going to change. And do I want to really buckle down and do the work for another ride? So the timing seemed right. And so we just said, hey, let's put our feelers out there and see if there's even interest in it.
What is so putting the feelers out, does that mean working with a broker or, asking around, or how do you even go about that process?
Yeah. And it was super scary, especially for contract and in a small town, right? Like, so I did go talk to a broker, but everybody knows everybody. So I was like, hey, we need to keep this super quiet. And because I don't want my customers thinking I'm selling and,
right.
just have that conversation out there. And because, contract screen printers are really integral to the customer's, livelihood. So we really wanted to not freak everybody out. But even when I was talking to the broker, I said, we got to keep this quiet. And they're like, okay, here's a screen print shop with 4 autos and 52 heads of embroidery for sale. I'm like, you can't say that. We're the only ones in 400 miles.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's obvious. So,
that definitely happens when there's equipment for sale or something. People are like, oh, that must be, X.
Right.
Or, yeah.
Yeah. So we even it was on the market for, I think, 2 days, and I got calls from customers, and I was like, all right, let's take it off. It's not, let's do something else. But through that relationship, Dan was also looking. And so it was behind the scenes that the brokers hooked up. So even though it was off the market, Dan still got word of it. So it worked out that way.
You mentioned a couple times running a profitable contract business. We've had this chat on here a couple times where folks have either tried it, they're kind of split between a more retail model and a contract model. You're pure contract, but running a contract business. And then also that was what really interested Dan to be able to take this to the next level. What are the tips maybe that you could share of running a profitable contract business? Because I think the perception is, well, you're getting cut down from everybody. Someone else will take the job for a couple cents less. Sure. It's hard to build a relationship there when people will just swap services now. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's just some normal business principles there, but just creating something sticky. So our software did allow customers kind of a platform that they could use and organize their business. Because a lot of the small ad specialty guys don't even have a system, right? They would use the automatic number generated in our system as their purchase order number. They didn't even have one. So there was that kind of level. It also helped the larger customers because they could have a customer service rep or, whoever have access to all of their sales reps orders and kind of keep track of it for them. So that was kind of neat. But really, I think the biggest thing is being super efficient, right? And having those processes, because you can't, in contract, you just can't waste time on anything can't get you hung up. Like receiving product can't get you hung up. Art can't get you hung up. You can't go to the press and go, oh, that doesn't look quite right. Let's take it down and try again, right? Like all your profits burned there, right? So you got to get it right on the first time. So I think so you have to be disciplined in what you say yes to, because screen printers are notorious for saying yes to everything, right? So saying no to some things that are just going to eat you up, and then that building that relationship. So it does buy you a lot of latitude where people will use you even if you are a few cents higher. If you have the relationship, they know what they're going to get. They know they're going to get it on time, and they know if there's a problem, you're going to take care of it, right? So that relationship does start to get you margin back after you build the relationship. But
Dave, can we talk a little bit about the technology and the customer portal? Dan's brought this up a couple of times and said there was a customer portal that was built. You kind of talk about giving it to the reps to be able to have. How long did it take for you to build something like that? Did you hire an outside firm to do it? Did you have someone develop it yourself? Because intellectual property and technology is valuable. And a lot of shops will obviously use out-of-the-box solutions. It sounds like at the time you built your own. Can you talk to us about that journey and that investment and what it took, how long it took, all that stuff?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I was, like I said, we were using Access, right? Way back in the day. And it was when really only Shopworks was around, right? And Shopworks sort of worked at the time, So actually we were with a customer, we're like, hey, we got to do something. And so we kind of both looked into different softwares and there was nothing out there. I was super fortunate in one of my good friends is a developer. And I said, hey, can we do something here? And he happened to be in between projects and said, sure. So I basically sat down on Illustrator, right? Because that's our tool, and designed some pages and kind of scribbled out some thoughts. And him and I sat in a room for 6-7 hours, and he had a vision, and I think it was done in 3 months. right? Is kind of the first round of it. And so it was just basically, we called it a customer portal. And it was a way to have customers enter their order, upload art, and keep track of product was the main goal of it. Right. And so that's what we did from the beginning. And it was actually a hard sell to customers at the beginning. They're like, what's a portal? Like, we're not on a boat, right? Like,
how long ago was this, Dave?
2005.
Oh, wow. So like, we're talking
early days.
Yeah.
Basically, broadband internet is coming. We're done with AOL CDs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we were still downloading, videos on Morpheus and stuff, and not Napster anymore, but
Winamp or something, or what the hell is it then?
Yeah.
Groove Shark.
DLC.
Yeah.
Groove Shark. There we
go. So yeah, it was kind of a hard sell in the beginning, but once customers got it, they latched on pretty quick, and it definitely streamlined our business. So.
Did you have to, so if you developed the software in 2005, I don't know, like what kind of coding software was then, did you have to continually update it to get it to like 2022 levels or,
right.
Like what kind of continued maintenance? Because like once you make that investment, it's like, does it stop?
Right. Yeah. So it was all .NET, ASP.NET, C#. And then, so the only time we really touched it is we bought my dad's embroidery company and rolled everybody into all the customers into one roof. We had the same customers, just doing, two different services. So I actually purchased my dad's company, put them into one roof. So we had to add embroidery to the software, that ability. So we did that one revision in 2011, I guess, somewhere around there, and haven't touched it since. So
wow.
There's definitely, so there's definitely been some issues with, browser updates and all that stuff.
Oh, yeah. It's Internet Explorer like 6 days.
Right. So we go ahead.
Go ahead. What were you going to say? Continue.
Yeah. We've had to, we just 2 days ago had to redo, our outbound emails because, they're not even using basic authentication anymore. So we had to use another service and have it route through there. So definitely some problems. And that's why we've been developing the new portal.
Dan, when you're looking at a business like this, you're coming in, you mentioned, I wanted to buy the business because of the portal, you like that overall processes, and it was a profitable contract printer. I'm curious on the financial side, like creating a sound business. Dave, you talk about that. I want to have a sound business, but what does that mean, like, Dan, from your end looking in, as in, like, what are the aspects that you feel like mean it's a healthy shop? Is it a spend thing? Is it a margin thing? Is it a team thing? Right? Because it's tricky, I think, even buying a business that doesn't have a solid team behind it, right? I could take this over. Am I going to be doing everything here? I don't know if I necessarily want to be doing that. So if you could just expand a little bit more there.
Yeah, I mean,
with
sure.
the context of you also saying that I knew the challenge was around capital and that transition.
Yeah, I mean, Dave ran a very frugal company. That was one of the reasons why I liked it as well. As he was very frugal with his money, and but he's self-capitalized a lot of stuff, and I knew that if it was going to scale, it was going to need some capital at a faster pace than it was, right? And I think Dave was probably at that spot, like he said. The next wave for him was probably that question as well. We've talked about that a couple of times, but I felt like I thought the business was investable. I didn't think that the purchase price was going to be the end of the deal. And that proved to be true. But was it, what about the culture? I think you can tell by the podcast right now is that Dave's a real process guy, and he took the business from a real business side. I didn't really recognize when I came in, because it made sense the way Dave ran his business, but I didn't realize that there is a challenge in the industry for that mindset. That's probably the largest challenge that I see. But I didn't know that. I just looked at Dave, the way he ran his business, and I thought this is scalable, but it does need some investment beyond the purchase. So we've done that. The other thing is I you mentioned the team. I mean, the team was extremely seasoned. They knew exactly what they did, where they were at, what their roles were. Very talented people. Like Christy, our art director, has probably been on board, Dave, 15 years, something like that. I mean, we don't have to worry about art. We hide her a little bit because we don't want her out doing creative stuff. Obviously, her job is to get the proofs done and so on and so forth. But I also felt Dave's character, as you can see, we're still talking and working together, right? I was a little nervous. He's a little young. I thought to myself, wait a second, is he really serious about this? Does he really care about the company? But I believed he did. And almost 5 years later, it's proven to be true, right? So when you buy a business, and obviously the discussion is make sure the character of the owner is correct and that everything matches, right? You look at the P&L, you talk to the people. He let me do that. And I just felt, and I thought this industry was very interesting because S&S and Sanmar in Reno, I saw California expenses and all those things going on. So I'm a logistics guy, and I thought this has got to be the best spot for being able to serve the 9 Western states. And I was correct. And by the way, Dave knew that as well. He's from Reno, but his business was growing. And, one thing Dave told me is I have more customers and more demand than I can handle. And that obviously piqued my interest. I said, why? And of course, talked about those things. I thought to myself, okay, this is a business that could triple in 5 years. And by the way, we've tripled in 5 years. So I think that one of the reasons I wanted to have Dave on is that, a lot of times I get people saying, wow, look what you've done. But it was really the platform. Does that make sense? I mean, if you're going to buy a business, find something that you can see future value inside and outside the business, if that makes sense.
But what do you mean by capital investment? Like so you buy a deal closes or something, first 12 months, where are you spending the money? Where are you spending additional capital to invest in the business?
Well, it's funny because when I was talking to my wife about this, she kept looking at the equipment and the age of the equipment. And she said, these are old equipment. And I was focused on, but it's a great business. And she goes, well, you're going to need to buy more machines. And I said, but this is a great business. So we almost had this ongoing argument, even right to the close. She's like, are you sure you know what you're getting into? And I said, yes, but we've had to buy a lot of equipment. Obviously, even just growth, you've got to buy presses and so on and so forth. But Dave was very open about that, and like he said, I mean, he knew that was coming as well. I was aware that was going to be an expenditure for sure.
Gotcha. So upgrading equipment, new equipment. What else?
New portal. Just like Dave said. Okay. I mean, that cost us. We're over $500,000 in investment in that. We're testing with some clients right now, so we'll launch in the next month or two. But that was a big investment for the company as well. That Dave stayed on board and put his his passion into that and really helping us. I should say that, any large decision, Dave and I kind of make it ourselves, which is kind of unique. When you said I speak highly of him, it's pretty amazing. 5 years later, the first person I call of a large customer is entertaining growing our business by a very lot. And Dave's on the call with the customer. And so I have somebody that can kind of be my break. I called him yesterday. I said, tell me if I'm on the edge of a cliff here and I should back off. So, he really helps me look at things in a perspective that, I want to grow the business. I've got a lot of passion for it, but I also don't want to make a mistake. And he's got really, really good with that.
Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about a buyer and seller relationship, because I think what I'm hearing, this is on year 5 and you guys have a pretty, from what it sounds like, a strong relationship. The story that I make up in my head is when you buy a company, you have a year of transition time. Eventually you stop calling the past owner. They realize that you're doing it a different way, and there's probably a little dissension. That's something that I dealt with. I went into business and I had 2 business partners that were in business together, and we ended up buying out one and me sticking with the other one because me and the other one didn't really get along very well. Can you talk a little bit about the relationship that you guys have created? Did you guys meet a lot beforehand to know this is going to work? Talk about issues that you were going to have ahead of time? Did you have a coach to help you guys through this? How do you guys have such a sound buyer-seller relationship? Because I think this is, I don't know, a little bit of an anomaly. I don't hear about this as much.
Yeah, especially for 5 years.
Yeah.
Dave can probably speak to this because he probably has more emotion on this than me. But I would say, Dave, that it was a struggle the first year for sure. I'm completely different than Dave for sure. And I think one of the things that I've always done in my career, not always, in my early 30s, I did not do it. But what I found is don't break what works. Don't let your ego get involved, right? So a lot of the things that he did 5 years ago, the company still does because they're sound processes, right? Second thing is value people that are much different than you. And Dave is a lot different. What I found is that his brain thinks completely different than mine. If I decide I'm the owner and I want to do this no matter what because it's my bitchin' idea, well, great, but that may be a real big problem. And he's got me off of a cliff more than once for sure.
We were just talking about this, Stephen, in the car. We were grabbing coffee this morning, and it was a disagree but commit. Where all right, if you have trust in the other person, then I may not agree, but I commit to what you want to do, and let's move forward. I mean, you kind of do that with your CFO, Stephen. You should share because you guys are very different. You care about different things. You work on different things, but you trust each other's opinions there too.
Yeah, my leadership team, we're actually really good friends. And so people are like, you go into business with your friends? Well, like Steve, our CF, his name is Steve as well. We went to college together. We lived together. Our families are friends with one another, but he's polar opposite of me, but he has all the voids that he fills all the voids that I've created. But we have an insane amount of trust with one another, and we disagree on a lot of things, but when we disagree, we can commit to each other's leadership. And so the example is, there's two ways to go about something. And if I commit to his leadership, I'll be like, I might not agree with you, but I trust the shit out of you. And if it's wrong, I'm not going to hold a grudge against you. Right. And so that's disagree, but commit. And there's different parts of our business, our CTO as well, Neil, our VP of sports, Adam. We've known each other and had a relationship, so we know how to fight or we know how to disagree, right? Have you guys had any, maybe this is a little vulnerable, any real big disagreements, like knockout, drag out fights, like OC Chopper,
Yeah, right.
That was yours, Dave.
Yeah. Oh, great.
You're
Thanks.
welcome.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say in the beginning, that first year, right? Like, I think to speak to your emotion of selling, right? It's really hard as an owner to put so many decisions and so many hours and thought into something, and then have somebody else come in and, even evaluate it, let alone buy it and start changing it, right? So, I felt tons of emotion right at the beginning, for the people and for the change that they may go through. Plus, Dan's really good at looking at a business and finding weak spots, which he pointed out like on day one, right? And it was like somebody going through my underwear drawer, like, hey, these ones suck. Hey, well, yeah, I know they suck, but, right? So super vulnerable and super open, and then so had to kind of work through that process of right, this is what you signed up for. This is why we're doing it, is to do things different. And, and I think COVID really sped that up, because I would say that's probably our biggest and maybe last real disagreement, is how to proceed into COVID, right? Like, so tense and so emotional anyways, like everybody had emotion and polarized. And then for us to try to decide how to navigate that 6 months into our relationship, like that was like, yeah, brutal. It was brutal. And I've got family in the business and friends that I've had forever in the business. And so they're looking at me, then they look at Dan, and they look at me. And so that part was definitely a challenge. I think that was hard.
You ready for this COVID story? Is we gave one of our business partners an offer to buy him out November before COVID. It was a really good offer. COVID hits, and he's like, stop coming into work, like, kind of, but we're still paying him. February, March comes, he's sitting on it. He's like slow rolling us, not doing anything about it. and he knows that it's driving me nuts. COVID comes and he doesn't get back to us and then says, I'll take the deal. And I just like pulled it and I said, nope, no deal. And we bought the company probably 7 or 8 months later for a discount out of him being super desperate because he slow rolled us. So don't fuck with me. No, I'm just kidding. But COVID was a wild time. It was totally a wild time because he was going he's like, oh my God, this thing is going to go broke. What are we going to do? PPP. That's such a crazy time. I feel like when you buy a business, it's important to have maybe a third party that can help you mediate issues. Did you guys ever think about having like a coach or a consultant or someone to help with change management, or did you guys just do it yourselves?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. I mean, Dan's got so much experience in M&A and all that. I definitely felt, he had all of that in hand, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was just trying to catch up most of the time, honestly, right? And so,
yeah, I mean, you have to commit to his leadership to be like, okay, you've done this before. I know it's going to be rocky. I know we're going to have disagreements, but I'm here and I trust you. I think that's you're handing over your baby to someone else a little bit, or your underwear drawer, or however you call it.
Well, think of this just to give you context. Is we ended up in the shop telling a group of people that you're no longer going to have a job tomorrow, and a group of 15 people, which was 1/3 the staff, you're going to have a job. Dave had a lot of emotion about that, and rightfully so. Some of the disagreements we had is do we really have to be this aggressive? My answer was yes. And I don't know it's, right or wrong, or the right decision, wrong decision. It's such a hard decision, right? I mean, looking back, we did need to do that. But and you can imagine, I've got happy people on the right. It's 1/3 of the 2/3, and we just decided to do it. I think you and Dave disagreed even on that process. I just felt like we can't bring 2 people into a room and then 2 people into a room, and we had to move fast. Dave wanted to go a little bit slower, be a little bit more, soft with the employees and so on and so forth. I think his points were right. I just felt like, we've got to cut our expenses, get ourselves. I mean, we were 50% sports, and sports was gone for 2 years. We didn't know if it was gone for 2 years. I felt like we had to make the decision that it would be gone for 2 years. Not really in my mind, but the right decision or wrong decision isn't something to pat your back on. I just felt like, and Dave, I appreciate you saying that. I just felt like I'd been here before. And if you slow roll this thing, it could eat you alive. Does that make sense?
There's those decisions that we've talked about. You're running a business that you started, and there's certain decisions that are harder to make because you've been in it for so long, that sometimes I felt if there wasn't a hired CEO coming in, what decisions would they make today? And those are probably the ones that we've been slow rolling for, I don't know, 6 months.
Because they're emotional decisions.
More.
Yeah.
Right.
They're emotional decisions. You've got attachment to them, right? Like Dave's attached to his employees that have worked for him forever. And we have this pandemic, and Dan's thinking, I just bought this thing. I got to make sure this business lasts. I hope I have a business when this is over. And I think sometimes when you're ready, when you have an emotional decision, you always have to think about, if I make this decision, will it elongate my runway? Will I last because of it? Or will I last one day longer? And if the answer is I will last one day longer, it's probably the right decision to make, because more often than not, businesses make the last responsible decision to close something or lay people off when professional CEOs will see it ahead of time and say, we got to do layoffs. I need this business to last. It's hard to do. It's super hard to do.
Super hard.
Yeah. And I guess the decisions that are even harder for me are the ones that are not life and death, right? Like that are like the margin between.
But also, Dave, you would sacrifice, I'm sure, a lot more than Dan. Because I'd say, look, all right, fine, I won't take a salary, I won't do this or that. The hired CEO is not doing that. It's like, look, here's the model I built out, and this is what we need to do to be able to stick to that. I do feel like there's 2 interesting lessons learned, and I'm not sure where they come into play as far as business size wise to get good at it, but skill levels wise is one is like, yeah, that sort of ghost of you as a hired CEO, what decisions would they make? And to really work towards making those better decision sooner. And then when you start working with more senior executive, management level people, trusting that versus, wanting, it's easy to step on each other's toes, or like you wanting to be too in the weeds of it, and not really handing off the keys to let them be able to do their best work as well.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, absolutely the right decision coming out of COVID it's clear now, right? Like I would have definitely been head down in the weeds, checking on employees and customers. And Dan was like PPP money, future secure, right? Like he did all of that stuff that I know that I wouldn't have done nearly as well. So, in hindsight, it's way clear to me that like good decision, best thing for the company would not have been here if we wouldn't have done it this way. So,
okay, I want to keep this going. What advice? So, if you were to look back at yourself, Dave, 5 years ago, what advice would you give shops? Maybe 10 years ago, what advice would you give yourself on building a business that's sellable? What would you have done a little differently, changed, thought about earlier? What advice would you give?
Yeah, I guess for me, just the exposure Dan's given me to the bigger corporate kind of world has been interesting in that I just always assumed that there was way more intelligence, way more skill behind all these big businesses that I think that's really there, right? Like the difference, I guess there's some key differences between small business and big businesses, right? But to not shortchange, like even in the way that we sold, I was told nobody's going to do a stock sale with a company your size, right? Like it's not going to happen. They're not going to take the risk on. It's going to be like, you have to do an asset sale.
So that a broker?
Broker, right?
Yeah. I always learn to take a grain of salt with everything brokers say.
Right.
For sure.
So that process, I think looking into that more and being more, not trusting the experts in that case, right? Like, and doing your own research and figuring out what was best, and then not shortchanging what your company's worth. Not that I got a bad price, I'm not saying that, but if we would have done a stock sale, things would have looked different and been an easier transition, right? Things like that. And not knowing, Dan was actually open to it, but we didn't even know that because the broker was in the middle saying asset sales the only way, right? So I think that was one big thing, is just structure. Originally, right, like I was just a partnership with my partner, 50-50, which was a nightmare, which anybody with a 50-50 partnership probably knows, right? So that structuring it right from the beginning would have been helpful to do an S Corp or a C Corp if you're thinking about selling, right? So that at least the stock is on the table. Like you could have a conversation about it. With a partnership, like you're doing asset sale, right? So I think structure that way, and then keeping clean books and all that have to be, but structure and then not shortchanging yourself.
It's interesting. As I've talked to more and more shops, I'll ask them about their books, and a lot of people cringe. Like, how are your books? And they're like, Yeah. Or like they're okay. They're kind of messy. They're this and they're that. I think if you don't have clean books, like your business is just, it's not sellable. I don't know. I don't know, Dan. I feel like that's got to be the first checkbox.
Yeah, I immediately did a C corporation. Like Dave said, we kind of were forced by the broker into something I was unfamiliar with. They made me feel like it was going to be okay. I'm not trying to be negative, but if I did it again, Dave and I, if we had enough conversations, I think we could have navigated into a different environment, but the broker was in the middle. Does that make sense? So, but definitely, the clean books that Dave had were great. Obviously for me and for the business, right now we have a project. I think I have a meeting tomorrow about, is our assets on the balance sheet proper? And by the way, I think they're too low. So I'm going through evaluations. I might hire a consultant to do that. But, I've just been trained, because when I was a CEO, it was always about, where's the company's value, and people looking at you and getting investors and capital from banks and things like that. So I think that if somebody is shying away from that, that really means they need to get a professional. On our board is my CPA, and he's more of really a business consultant, and I put him on pretty quickly. So he's all in it, and he reminds me, and he works on it, and I think it needs to be a priority, not something in the back burner at all.
What do you think going forward now? You talk about continuing to now grow and differentiate the shop. How do you do that? What's your thoughts and your plan that, I guess your thesis from buying SSPI?
Well, we're one of the things, and one of the reasons I want to have this call is I have been extremely appreciative of Dave right now, because we're in a high growth area, and you can already tell the way his mind thinks. He definitely is helping me through. How does that affect the people in the business and things like that? We're talking to a customer that we may bring on that's going to be $4 million, something like that. We're running 8 or 9 right now. So, trying to get that expert advice and really looking at it. Like I said, I call them up and I go, okay, I got this idea. Does this make sense? Can we handle this? What about the leadership team? We have talks about the depth of the leadership team. Probably spilling some beans to my staff right now, but I use Dave as that sounding board for those things. Those are my concerns. I can traditionally go too fast, so I really need that CPA. I really need Dave. I need those people around me to say, hey, this is exciting, this is great, and the customer, but can we make money? Does it scale? What about equipment? What about the leadership team? Those. When you begin to grow, it's a lot of fun and there's a lot of emotion in it. But I always say emotion in business can be your killer. Right? Your ego in business can be a killer for sure.
That's a Cuban quote. I really like that. Separate logic from emotion to make the right decision.
That's a good one.
Well, what about, so do you have a sales team? Or it sounds like there's tons of new sales coming in. Are you just doing outreach? Where's that come from?
No, you're looking at the sales team right now. So, Dave and I look at, if it's a smaller customer inquiry, I vet them and I go through it. In contract, if, we hadn't discussed it, but what I've learned through Dave is that, not every customer is a good customer and a fit. It's not that they're bad people or a bad company, but, we value that they know art. We value that they know garments. Because we don't control those things, we need them to be very proficient in those things. So, really trying to do that. If it's a large opportunity, then Dave and I are on the call. And really, this large company sent me a note from their assistant saying, hey, we want to chat. And I immediately called Dave. I said, hey, once they send an NDA, I realized, okay, this could be a big opportunity. I called Dave and I said, hey, could you be in this process with me? I also want to keep my leadership team out of those calls. Does that make sense? So, we're really not a sales organization. We're a business to business printer, and those relationships have to make sense for the customer and for us. Especially on the large size.
Are you sending cold email or LinkedIn messages, or obviously that one sounded like it was inbound, but what about the others?
I purchased a vehicle called Seamless AI. It's just nowadays, it's great. I think there's Zoom, there's a lot of them, but I tend to look at what fits us. And then I will, I have a social media person now, so she's doing a lot of great work. So some of that work is off me now. So I'll tell her, hey, here's some targets, and she'll use Seamless AI to create kind of this is what the company is. So the marketing is not done by me anymore, but when that inquiry comes back, it goes to my desk. Does that make sense? So,
Smart.
so she's working it. I tell her, hey, I really like this vertical. I really like these companies. Can you search Seamless AI? She'll come up with a list, and then I'll say, hey, that looks great, or I'll give her a little bit of input, and then off the vehicle, off those communications.
And you're sending cold emails from there, but calling and doing all that.
Personalized. We don't send any spam. Yeah. I personally hate spam, so it's got to be personalized.
That's my world. But I feel like you guys are real spear fishing. Right? You are trying to get, it's not like you're casting crazy nets, but you're very selective about your customers, right? You'd rather get a couple big fish than take a bunch of scraps. I feel like you're a true contract printer. I don't, there's the halvesy contract printers that contract print sometimes, but want to go retail. You guys are very committed to that. It seems like.
For sure. Yeah.
I don't know.
That's definitely the history of it. Yeah.
And that's Dave's history. And I like that part. Just so when you say, hey, I was the buyer, I said, how do you get your customers? And he says, well, they kind of come to us. And then he was like, and then I sort them out to see if it's a fit. And I was like, I like that. I'm not a B2C guy. So, when it was a B2B and he used that language, I thought, hey, that's me. Does that make sense? And somebody else may be really good at B2C, but I'm very passionate about developing business relationships. And I think it's more strategic. It's pretty tactical and hard to build a B2C business. Maybe it's just because of the way my emotions and brain work, but I like this business. I like helping companies. I was going to say, we were 50%, maybe 40% sports, maybe something like that before COVID. We had to pivot during COVID, and we had to, and we agreed that retail was something we should get into. Now retail is over 50% of our business. Sports is 11. So, we had to build hang tagging and UPC labels and fulfillment and blank inventory management. We pick for our customers. They bring us in containers of freight directly so they don't have to put it in their warehouse. Retailers are, maybe, in my opinion, retailers are somebody you can really partner with. We're a key for them, for sure. And we dropped to ship to stores and so on and so forth. So it was a strategy shift. I think without Dave and really without the company and its processes, it couldn't have been done at all.
Dan, when you say the word retail, you mean working with like big box stores, or, that's still a B2B relationship, not like going to the local PTO. I think in our world, we think of like retail. You're in a whole different world. Bruce, you're going to say something?
What do you think then, Dan, for you and your role is? So, is it over time you want to bring someone in to manage more of this and you just focus on sales? Do you want to bring in someone to handle sales and you step out a little bit further? Or?
Yeah, I just yesterday I stopped going to our 3:00 production meeting, and I said, guys, you're not going to see me anymore. So I'm really trying to back out of the business. We say in the business or working on the business. So I'm really trying hard to work on the business. Obviously, you got to look to your leadership team. There's a ton of time and investment in teaching them principles and teaching them how to delegate your delegation and trust. Trust is a hard one, right? Control is in all of us. So I'm going through that. I mean, Dave and I have talked about what are the next steps for leadership. Do we have the right people? Do we need somebody to run the company and then me have a different role? I would say I keep thinking we're probably 1 to 2 years out from that needing to be done. Does that make sense? It's not tomorrow, but it's something we have to talk about.
I like it. Dan, can I share your email if any folks want to reach out?
Sure.
Dan.frank@silverscreenprinting.com. Dan's got so much knowledge. Dave's got so much knowledge too. Dave, I could share your email too if you're open to it, but you will get email. So
yeah, go through Dan.
Go through Dan. Dave's on the outs. Come on.
Yeah. All right,
respect his retirement. What the heck?
All right. Well, I don't know.
Bruce, what's your cell phone? Hey, Bruce. What's your cell phone number, Bruce?
It's definitely out there. The amount of spam is insane. All right, Dan.Frank@silverscreenprinting.com. Dan's got so much knowledge, especially I love coming from outside of this industry and coming into it. That to me is powerful. So we appreciate that. Print Hustlers, we appreciate you guys joining in every week and listening to another episode here. Guess we'll see you in the next one, huh?
All right.
Thanks so much, guys.
Awesome.
All right. See you guys. Thanks so much for listening. Hopefully that was informative. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to hit the bell for notifications if you enjoyed this video. If you enjoy all the stuff we're putting out, it's really helpful. We love to just be able to see it. That means that we're doing a good job. To subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and hit the like button. And I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.